Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining. This is actually August 27th, a Digital World Town Hall meeting, and we are joined by a live audience, and we will be focused on this agenda for today, a simple review of current advancements as well as things that are happening in the world, and then any kind of general Q&A that we have from the live audience. Grateful for those that are in attendance today and to have the trio, so to speak, with Al, Wally, and Terrence here if there's any kind of support related questions. As a reminder, this is a private membership association, and some of the things that we talk about may be forward looking. For those of you that are maybe new, we're talking about decentralization and how it can actually free humanity, and some of the things that the Clear companies are focused on for the digital world. One of the big things that occurred this last week is, at least yesterday, is the final announcement of some of the information that has been segregated around administration, whether that has to do with elections, whether that has to do with different departments within the US government, influencing different types of social platforms as well as news platforms. This one in particular is just Meta, also known as Facebook. And then the FBI basically specifically focusing in on the supposed Russian disinformation operations around the Biden family and some of the information there. This is just a very interesting thing to observe, especially when so many of us were deplatformed and said that some of the things we're talking about were conspiracy theories and things like that. But we see this every week where there are continued validation around the importance of knowledge and really the individuals owning their own identity, having a voice, and at the same time having a voice that's respected based upon a reputation. So people can actually operate in their own sphere with their own ability to actually build a reputation, but at the same time have privacy. And then also prove who they are if they want to do certain things. Maybe it's around managing a business, maybe it's around voting, etc. So we'll dig into some of those things as we see it real time. Some of the other advancements this last week, for those that were not aware, today is, today is the 27th, and on Thursday, so the 29th, in 2 days, we were going to have President Donald J. Trump here in Utah, and that has been postponed. We won't know the exact dates, but that particular thing has been postponed, and it was primarily focused around, we had an event that we were looking to just piggyback with that around decentralizing America and showing the tools as it related to identity, health, voting, finance, business, different kind of currency, equity, commodity exchanges, and then currencies for different parts of the world, and then dispute and reputation management. So we look forward to him announcing when he will be able to come to Park City. In the interim, we actually have some wonderful folks that are coming in, and we've got some neat things that we're working with some of them on. Started last Friday, and we look forward to providing a little bit more color on that. But that'll actually be Tucker Carlson, as well as Glenn Beck and some others that will actually be here in Utah. And same type of thing where we hope to be able to focus on really decentralizing America with an alternative to what is currently going on, especially when it comes to, people still talking about voter fraud. And then you see things around identity issues. This last month, we have all the social security numbers of basically every single person in the database that was compromised. It's just a matter of time until those social security numbers get linked into databases that actually have bioinformation, such as the ClearMe database system within the centralized systems at the airports and other things, which we'll talk a lot about that in the future. Today, people may not understand the triangulation, but it's very important. And that's one of the reasons that the digital world is here, and some of the things that we're focused on within the Clear companies to actually bring that to fruition. There was something that was also brought to our attention, just to get on your schedules, the 25th, actually here in Salt Lake, we have some folks called the Unity Tour that are actually hitting, I want to say it was 33 different locations within a short period of time. I can pull it up here in a second. Actually, I probably should, because this is going to be something, this is the actual tour itself, and we hope to be able to help them understand how this decentralized America is important prior to them starting on their tour. So you can see September 3rd in Florida, and then just basically hitting from the south all the way through Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, California, Oregon, Washington, Montana, Idaho, and then into Utah. So really just they're pushing a lot. And this isn't the exact same thing that we're focused on, but a lot of these folks, when they look at this tour, they're going to be the same individuals that are already awake. They already understand some of the issues around what's really happening, and they want to be a part of the solution. So it's important for us to be able to turn on lights with some of these parts and pieces. So that's basically a lot of the different elements that have been going on. A lot of it's around awareness and adoption. For those that may be tuning in at the beginning, this is originally it was really just different unions. So you can kind of see the different unions here. This is the whole population of the world, about 8 billion folks. You can see the smallest union in the Pacific is where we've spent the majority of our time over the last 16 months, meeting with about 28 different countries. And the countries that we're specifically working with now are on this map. There's some that are actually advancing and more active. We've seen a new stimulation within Vanuatu, which for those that are not familiar, it's a little island, about 83 different islands, 83 languages, 81 islands, small area. If you haven't heard of New Hebrides, that's actually what it was called before. It was also right next to New Caledonia down there by New Zealand. And so you see all these different new things. Well, those just represent colonialized ecosystems. But Vanuatu actually stood up against the Brits and the French at the same time and said, we want our country back, similar to what New Caledonia did with the Brits, with the French. They're currently actually doing that today. But when they stand up, it's how do they actually roll out systems? How do they actually become sovereign and independent, but still play in the future systems? And that's what this Pacific Union really enables, is all of these different countries to come together with how they treaty together, how they identify together, how they work together, how they transact, how they have, whether it's exchanges or whether it's identities or whether it's travel. And then the Pacific Union actually will work not just within the Pacific, but around the world, similar to the European Union, on people wherever they travel. So if they're in these ecosystems and they travel to different parts of the world, and there's some that will be adopted from other elements. So, for instance, you've got other parts of the world. One of the ones that is most important, that I believe has a very important role in this, is the Hopis. So the ability for individuals that are absolutely sovereign, independent, and separate from systems, understanding who they are and standing up and enabling the world to really stand up. So grateful for some of the involvement that's there. And when people start understanding that these different tribes, kingdoms, principalities can basically become a part of these different unions, and the unions are different in different parts of the world, we'll start seeing a lot of this come together. And people may say, well, what is this and what do they come together on and how does it work? It's really around, like for instance, within this Hopi ecosystem, it's around how people identify, how birth certificates are issued, how adoption happens. And what's one of the things that we saw is how adoptions happen into these ecosystems are not something that is just a piece of paper. It's very important and serious, but at the same time, it also provides an understanding that we're one world and one people, one family. And the sooner that we recognize that and we stop really the greed and the pride and the egos and the fighting, the faster that we'll be able to find peace and joy and the basic happiness that I believe that we're all here on earth to have. It shouldn't be as confusing and as crazy as it is, but the ability to basically get certificates or licenses or even registrations, whether we're talking about a financial system, whether we're talking about a business or assets or land, all of these systems have basically been stood up. And, there's some that are more mature, there's some that have less, there's some that are different. For instance, in the American ecosystem, or let's pull up the Hawaiian ecosystem. And I'll actually pull up one of the core ones. You can kind of see some of the folks that are really assembling and working hard to stand up for what's been taken, really. And the goal is to how can there be unity within these different ecosystems where the centralized systems want them confused. They want them to have noise and interruptions and to have issues with one another. But The goal is to really be able to, let's pull this up. The goal is to bring them together as far as technology enabling them to be able to stand up as one people based upon the individual really having their own data and their own identity per se. So some of the things that we didn't talk on were some of the registration systems, as well as, like, for instance, land registration or asset registration, or let's say license plates. So the ability to actually have, the ability to have a private, whether it's a boat or a motorcycle or an automobile or any of those types of environments that you normally would license and register, like with the license plate. Those things are things that can actually be cryptographically secured and linked. So with that being said, a lot of moving parts. Things are happening right now, especially in the United States of America, where we're in full-fledged election cycles. A lot of people, some people say, it's going to be another situation where honesty and transparency is not going to be real. Some people think they won't even happen. But all I know is, whatever happens, decentralization is still a true and correct principle and need for humanity. And so we're grateful to be able to be focused on this for so very long at such a crucial time. The goal is, hopefully, some of these folks that we're talking with, whether we're talking about, Mr. Trump, President Trump, or whether we're talking about, Tucker Carlson or Glenn Beck, or even other individuals that just want to make a difference out there in the world, being able to drive awareness, being able to drive an understanding that, hey, there is an alternative. Is it perfect? I would say in many ways it absolutely is fully integrated, much better than the current systems. For instance, when we look at Texan or even Texas, so Texan is a movement where Texas is actually standing up as a state or a country again, but there's also some folks within the state side of it that want to be able to stand up as a state. And when you look at some of the capabilities where they can actually have individuals identify, and vote and get registrations and license plates and all these other parts and pieces, this system is much more integrated than the current system that you see within these different regions. Why? It's not just that the identity is built around the individual from a simple scan like this. So you literally just grab an application. You don't have to just use a decentralized phone like this Clear phone. It'll work off of any type of device worldwide. So it's Apple devices, Android devices. And what I've done is I've basically lit up what they call a Life app. So there's different jurisdictions for the Life app. This one per se is actually the Texan Life, but you can see how things can actually be issued from certificates. You can join councils and have voices if there's a dispute or some type of case that needs to be brought up, or a claim. If you want to start up a business, you can see there's already, different businesses in here. Then you can also have digital assets that tie to those businesses. You can see how they're actually deployed. Absolutely the future of the financial system, the identity system, the currencies, equities, and commodities. You'll see that this technology will absolutely be a part of the world, and it will span these different regions, these bioregions or unions that we're talking about. Currently, the world really only has one, and that's the European Union, and that started around the Second World War coming to its close, and it started with 6 or 7 countries. Now it's about 27, 28 countries. So you'll see that what the European Union is doing around GDRP, as well as around the euro, you'll see that this is actually very in place with that, but it's absolutely the future. So real-time transactions, no fees unless the jurisdiction wants the fees, and then the ability to actually do it in a totally decentralized way with no banks, no government, but the individual actually owns their own identity and assets. So very important. I'll stop blabbing now. Anybody that's got comments, thoughts, anything that you've seen that's transpired over the last week, feel free to, or if there's anything that you just feel is important to bring up, as I know things are shifting within humanity. So now is a good time if you've got something you want to say, or questions or thoughts. Live audience is not so lively. That's okay. There was a wonderful gentleman that we were going to have on today. You'll get to know him in the future. His name is Eric. But yeah. Some of the other things that we're working on are opportunities within the Mexican country and that ecosystems. There's some advancements that you'll see here. This is all new systems here, and actually how they actually link into existing type of systems. You'll see some advancements within the health world. There's some existing relationships that we hope to be able to make that become a reality. This was one of the things that they wanted to see within this region around health. And then you'll see some advancements around the voting systems as well within the Mexican system. So this is an interesting video that's actually been added if you want to dig into that, why Mexico is so very important, especially as it comes into the future. There's a key here. We don't have a very lively crew today, so if we don't, we'll just have simple Q&A and wrap up early. I'll give you guys time back, but appreciative of you showing up. Are there any things that you want to bring up or any questions that you might have?
Yeah, well, I just want to share that we're very excited to bring these proposals to the government in different areas, because I think it's something that will serve a lot our country, and we're preparing a shorter video. I love the video that you put it in the web page. It's really good. But it's like, yeah, the whole story. Like, I definitely recommend everyone to go watch it. It's really interesting to see the possibilities that Mexico as a country has. And we are preparing like a really short 1.5 to 2 minutes video to be able to show this to the government. Of course, in Spanish, the video that is now in the page is in English for everyone to understand. We'll put some subtitles and stuff, but we are working in a little presentation to explain all of the benefits that can have this, but in a manner that it's also very clear and interesting for the government itself to take this technology in their hands and to give it to the people as well, like work hand by hand with the different governments to be able to have a way better system for our country. So yeah, I don't know if I can share.
That reminds me, you can share. While she's preparing to share, Wally, if we could create a task for Mohan to enable the multilingual capabilities where this drops down, to be able to have others log in and actually modify that.
Yeah, that would be great. There's some things that are still in English, and that it will be easier to people from Mexico to understand if it's everything in Spanish, right?
Exactly.
So there's just some things that we need to work on that. But yeah, what we're doing is like a little, I don't know if I shared with you the Universal Declaration of Peace video that is really easy and simple that I made out from a presentation, but that becomes like a video that is really dynamic, and that's what I'm working on right now. We'll share the video when it's ready, but we can share right now how is it like the progress of making it into a little presentation. How do I share screen here, Aki?
If you want to share, there's just a little button that has an arrow that goes to the
here,
right.
no?
Yep, you got it.
Now you can see?
Yeah, you got it.
Yep. So it's a little bit like...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So revolution, the democracy in Mexico. I'm putting a little bit of like the images that also like we face a lot of violence in Mexico within all the politics things. So it's something that should be addressed ASAP. And we're putting how these systems could bring a solution for security, for transparency, traceability, and to be accessible as well for everyone from any type of mobile phone or anything. And what's the benefits of like having more confidence from our people as well, to have a system that is incorruptible, right?
This is really good to see.
Goal was to reach all of these, no, like to be able to get as many people as possible using this system, that it will be way more dynamic, and we will also allow all the Mexicans in the world to be participating in these things and have a lot more security in what we are working on, and explaining the potential as well. I took some of the images from the video too, that it's like how Mexico can have a lot of potential in an international impact if we get solve these situations, right? So it's a little bit of that call to action to participation and trust, transparency, security, and accessibility to everyone. And yeah, all of the systems that we could implement, and the things. So we're working on it.
This is so good to
that's gonna
see.
be
This is so very good to see. I didn't even know you guys were cranking on this. This is awesome.
We are, yes.
Well
So
done.
it's just going to be easier as well to explain. Yeah, to the government, right, and to all of the people. Like everyone can be understanding something very simple and how and why it's needed, and it will be like better for our country to use a system like this, right?
You know, it's a dream come true to see people actually taking the tech and using it, because that's how it's supposed to happen, is people just take it, adapt it how they want to, create their own structure, and whether it's policies and procedures and councils, and it's wonderful to see. That was really neat to see. Thank you. And I look forward to locking down those meetings. It sounds like we've got some key days that maybe overlap, like on the 7th, but let's figure out how to make sure we get it all done, because there's some interesting stuff happening in both America and Mexico at the same times. So it looks like there's a couple.
Yeah,
hands
it's
up.
amazing.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's amazing all the things that is happening right now at the same time with Mexico and the United States, because, well, we share a common history, you know. I mean, the official name of Mexico is United Mexican States.
You know,
So it's very funny that.
I think that is so amazing. I thought about that this morning. I was actually doing a chore, and I thought it is just neat to learn about how all of the United States and all this unfolded, and all the real history. And you've been one that's really educated me on a lot of it. And that name says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, because at the end, we only not share like a common history, you know, but also if we want to make this like America's union, but first we need to be able to work together, these two nations, you know, and put aside all the conflicts, all the things that we have within each other, because some of the realities is like right now in the United States, there are almost, I think, like 40 or 50 million people living there, Mexicans in the United States, you know, and all those people, regardless on how or why, right now they just want to work and try to do their best and trying to put something on the table. This whole nation, and I think the idea of this nation was to build a better future, you know, to create something new and to be an example for the whole humanity. And I think we need to have that vision on mind all the time, you know, in order to create a new paradigm, a new shift in the reality. I think that's the main thing that I want to put on the table all the time, you know, because it's something that we need to address more carefully.
I want you to know that the work that you and Steph and many others are doing, it will change the future. It really will. And I know this may be a new journey and a new path, but for you to see it and to self-select and to just engage, especially to the level that you all are, I really believe it can change humanity. Because you think about it, what you just talked about was the Americas coming together, Turtle Island coming, all of it. And, you know, we're talking about America and all of the different bumps that it's got on right now, Canada, like there's people on this call from Canada, there's people on the call from Australia and New Zealand and the Pacific and all over. And if we can all just start coming together and start working as one, and it starts with just a small group of folks, and we don't even have to be, perfect, so to speak. Like if you look at the founding fathers of America, these were all in many ways some misfits that were like, you know what, we're done with this. We're going to create a better way. And, just with them coming together, and I don't even think it has to have that much depth to it, because the financial systems and the digital systems and the identity systems and the voting systems and the health systems, they're all in flux. They're all have massive issues. And this decentralized systems that we're talking about solves like 80+% of almost every one of those categories. I mean, the ability to come in, I don't know that we've got the Mexican voting. I would love to have the Mexican voting stuff that's up. I don't think I'm going to just log into Clear Life and come down to the voting side of this. So we'll just log into this. And we will say that let's vote. So let's go ahead and give him a vote. This is as complicated as it needs to be. So it's basically doing 5-factor authentication, something I have, something I am, all in the space of time. It takes, whether it's a facial sync, if you're on an Apple phone, which I don't believe is the right way, but that went from 17 to 25. And the whole world basically just saw that. So it's not like when people go to different voting booths, whether they're physical, whether they're digital, whether they're logged in, whether they're mailed in, it's who cares what's happening there. It's the calculation system on the other side of it that needs transparency. And we already know that the system's broken. We already know it from the software developers. They told us that 20 years ago, like literally almost 20 years ago, they said this. Whether it's the documentations and the systems that say, oh, these Dominion voting systems are not connected to the internet, so you can't have tampering. But yet, when the virus that came out, or I should say the update file that came out, what was it? Just not even, well, I'll just say it was last month, and 5.8 million servers went offline. Some of the voting systems were actually the servers, the ones in Maricopa County where they're supposed to be not connected online, where we actually, a large portion of what was supposedly lost as far as the last presidential debate or election, these people are calling foul play. A lot of people are calling foul play all over the place, but do they see a system? Like this gentleman this last week, I'll switch a vote. So I'm actually switching a vote. And every vote that I make, it's documenting all of it. But the world doesn't know who I am, but they can see the transaction, so to speak. So super important. By the way, I just want to take a shout out to this man who's really, I know this last week, he basically said, I'm done running. I'm going to put my independence and confidence behind Mr. Trump and JD Vance. And I just want to say big thanks to him and Robert F. Kennedy and his family and his crew. And, we had some opportunities to meet with him in Hawaii as well as in Utah. And he's just been very out there and run an amazing campaign. I can only imagine how much energy and effort it took for him to do that. But hopefully this is something that actually adds value. Over this next week, I can tell you that Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr., Robert F. Kennedy, as well as the folks we're talking about with Tucker Carlson and Glenn Beck, we will be spending resources and time actually focusing in on enabling them to understand what is going on. So other thoughts or comments or feedback or statements by anybody that's in the audience, you're welcome to it. Go ahead, Phoenix.
Hey, thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. I'm sorry I had to bounce out for a few minutes. I had an urgent call
You're good.
come in. I
Thanks
did
for joining
miss the information regarding, I popped right back in when the discussion was regarding the bringing in the Mexican government policy. Can I get a brief, or do you want to call me afterwards on that information?
We can do it. There's some wonderful people on here that have absolutely done a lot. So this is basically all of the digital world systems stood up for the Mexican country in a decentralized approach to offer these services, whether it's around identity management, land management, asset management, reputation, where the individual owns their own reputation instead of putting it with, Equifax or TransUnion or Experian type organizations that would be similar to the US. They can actually do it and the individual owns it. A new financial system with payments and total transparency. You know all about that. Forensics as well. So there's transparency and honesty through the system, but at the same time, it can be an honest ecosystem, from health to assets or asset managements to business or business creation. And the system basically, these are the areas that they work within. And the system also has, and I'll just log in real fast. So again, 5-factor authentication, no usernames, no passwords. It's really the future of how identity will actually be managed. We don't just look at it as some 10-year fad, but literally I believe this will be thousands of years, hundreds of years, and if not thousands and thousands of years on this same type of architecture, if it's actually the awareness and the deployment is actually done correctly. So this is an example if you wanted to add a vehicle. This is an example if, let's say, you wanted to start a business. You would literally, it uses that same type of scanning capabilities. Some people know it as decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs. In the United States of America, the one core country or state that's actually doing it is Wyoming. So that actually created what is called a derived key. So this is a cryptographic key where the individual can actually prove that they own something or have voting or other abilities to manage it, but their identity is obfuscated. So that'll be a large portion of systems in the future. This is the process of actually creating a business. There's already businesses created, so I'm going to go ahead and just go back to one of them. I'll go ahead and click on, let's say, this ecosystem here. The world would actually see it like this. So you can see this is the unique cryptographic key for that particular business. You can see reputation, you can see physical location, digital location, other types of assets. And these are actually physical assets or digital assets that represent physical assets, and then how they can be shared in real time. So the Mexican country is something that is currently being positioned, and some of the individuals on this actual call are working in the process of doing that. And then there'll be a pilot. That's the goal, is to have a small pilot. It's actually one city with about 52,000 people, and then rolling it out throughout the whole country, which is about 140 million people. So that's a real quick summary, Phoenix. So anybody else? There's a couple other real solid players in that region that's on here. If they want to touch on anything that I may have missed, they're welcome to it. So Phoenix, does that bring you up to speed and accomplish what you were asking about?
It does, to a degree. I was just wondering if, as you know, I am quite, well, I have residency also in Mexico. So I'm wondering if there is anyone or who has been contacted within the Mexican government and so forth, and if there's any way that I may be able to assist in that with not just connections, but actual friends that are able to get things done in the governmental level as well as fintech and so forth.
We can. Right here is probably not the right place to mention names, just because this is a public forum. It's under private membership association, but it's still a public ecosystem. So we could take that offline and maybe have a phone conversation. Steph?
Yeah, I think it would be great to have a meeting just for the Mexican country. That would be great. And then
yes, I think that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, wonderful. Wonderful. It's that kind of collaboration that we hope that will bring unity. And it's not just in this ecosystem, but as others understand and realize what is capable here. So, Margaret, you've had your hand up for quite a while there. Something you want to go through? Right? Maybe that's a bandwidth thing. Maybe it's a bandwidth issue on there. If you wanted to say something, Margaret, you're welcome to it. If not, maybe that's not a hand up. It's looks like it might be a weak signal. Other topics or thoughts or comments or anything? Now's your time.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, Beck.
Sorry, I have to run another meeting and I was desperate to ask a question before I went in, but I know it's going to take some time. But I have a question about digital businesses inside of all about ecosystems. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when we have, let's just say, I'm going to just put out an idea. Let's just say we had like 10 businesses that were doing really well inside of our ecosystems over a period of time. And then say like after the 12-month period, we were like investing in the businesses and these types of things. And then they were like, okay, let's collaborate together. And because we've made profit over the 12, 24 months, whatever it was. And let's say we wanted to tackle something like starving children that are in San Francisco. And then say we got like Feeding America, Central Kitchen that do great work, and other NGOs or non-for-profits that create digital businesses. That would be like that would be transparency within businesses and non-for-profits where they could kind of like collaborate together and then say, yeah, we're going to tackle this because obviously we're better together. Our businesses are better together to tackle, say, poverty or problems in our communities, create projects together.
This is a really good example. I'm going to pull up America because it's related just to what you're talking about. I'm going to click on the health management category, and it's going to pull open a framework that basically is using different technologies to enable health and the individual to own their own health, their own data, their own goals. And it really, health is a simple thing around your environment. What are you putting into your body? How are you moving? And then maybe just other simple things around, whether we're talking about disease and other elements, it's data around how it's used. And so what this framework is, it's the individual owning their own data, their own prescriptions, their own. I'm going to go back over one to here because this is a really good example. So imagine if there was a framework where an individual could own their own identity and data, which is really what Health Information and Portability and Privacy Act, also known as HIPAA, was built for. And if they could actually own their own identity and data and then plug into different folks that needed that, maybe the folks aren't around healthcare. Maybe it's not because you had a pink eye and you call in and you say, this is what it looks like. And a physician remotely can look at it and say, that's conjunctivitis of the eye. Take this and this and this, whether this is homeopathic, this is pharmaceutical, this is, there's different roads, but it goes right down the road of what you're talking about, because food is actually something that we can solve if we're organized. Like, for instance, how does food get forecasted? I think what we're doing right now as humanity is the opposite of it, where in effect, what we're doing is actually taking down the different farms, the crops, the livestock. We're actually dismantling them and controlling them in such a way that's not good for humanity. But what if we were able to use systems where individuals own their own identity and data and financial and payments, and they could say, hey, we're going to come together in this type of a council or union and order. Historically in the United States of America, this is also known as co-ops, where they would forecast and say, hey, we want this to be grown in Mexico or in California, and then buy it in Oregon or Utah or wherever. And then they just facilitate the transfer and the shipping. But monocropping and centralized, whether it's health or whether it's food, these are all ways that they want to control people. And that's why decentralized systems are so valuable and important, because it's really, really simple. if an individual can own their own health and data and consumption, so like what kind of foods inside of the system is actually an element of what is it that you're consuming. And when you know what is being consumed, you can also know what is being needed. Therefore, you can forecast on the growing side of it. And then systems or ecosystems could actually also help pay for that. So imagine farmers that actually get 20% of their orders up front and paid so they can actually seed it, buy the seeds, plant the seeds, do whatever's needed to grow them. And then before they're actually shipped out, they also get funded. So the travel and transportation and the quality is all done. So it's all around really organizing supply chain and flow. And that comes to adoption. So for instance, let's take the Mexican ecosystem. And if they were to do something similar, I think that, I don't know, let's see. If they were to have, so these are similar systems where the individual actually, let's see, there's some other really good screenshots. A wonderful gentleman named Don he's dedicated his life to this for almost, I would say 15, 16 plus years, a very long time. But like full countries are rolling out these systems to actually help. And it's not Mexico today, but it's similar to Mexico in size and location, but I just can't divulge the name. But they're rolling out these same types of systems to basically help the individual be in control of their identity and their data and their health, and then forecast how food is grown. And so what that does, Beck, is it creates a lot of opportunities for different businesses to really start up and to plug into these types of ecosystems. Like think if farmers they could organize their orders. And then you start seeing other companies that are saying, hey, I'm going to take onions from there and sour cream from here and avocados from here and potatoes from here and meat from here. And we're going to use supply chain management to actually know where it's coming from, the quality of it, the freshness of it, where it was grown. And we're going to organize it into meals. For instance, the meals that I've personally had has come from these same types of systems with barcodes, with supply chain, and literally I would say 1 to 2 meals a day right now in my own personal life is being procured. And we actually come together as a family. We actually chop it up. We eat it. You know, it's bringing that nucleus of a country together around the family. It's not just the individual. We're all family, but how do we come together as a family to be able to create, I believe, a heart and unity? You know, I don't know about you, but in my family where we can say, what did you do today? What was good? What was bad? What was, you know, simple conversations can bring alignment that nothing else in life can. There's no joy, there's no happiness, there's no peace that can come from other things, if you ask me. There's no money. You know, I watched the presentation today. Elle on the call actually sent it to me. It's a gentleman down south that talked about, you know, in Ecuador, how they're rolling out not just Bitcoin, but they're rolling out health to this same topic. And he says, it doesn't matter how much money you have if you're dead. It really doesn't. And when we're talking about, and that's why I think one of the things that happened earlier and what we started this meeting on was this Facebook mess, right? So this letter that came out yesterday from Mark Zuckerberg to the United States House of Representatives, specifically Jim Jordan, to say the FBI, the Biden administration, you know, the elections, the COVID, all of this stuff was wrong. And we as Facebook did this and this and this. And I take my hats off to them. At least they're standing up and starting to be honest when others, namely X and others, are all being transparent. X has stood up to Brazil, to the European Union, and we're talking massive fines. We're talking shutting down offices. We're talking about just doing what is right for information and data's sake. And then when we start doing this and we start looking at it from an identity standpoint, all of these things matter. And really, when it comes down to life, without time here on earth, without the ability to just exist, none of this stuff matters. Doesn't matter how many systems we create and how much money is out there or an individual can amass, if without time and health and relationships, it's all for naught, if you ask me. I mean, I don't, I've learned simple lessons in life, but some of them the hard way, some of them the stupid way. But I think what you're talking about, where you're seeing a business opportunity where multiple folks can actually come together to create a system that's better. Like, I've probably touched on 2 or 3 business concepts that you're like, hey, we could do that in Australia, easy. And they're literally doing it here in the United States. And there's 3 or 4 companies that are really doing well. And I actually think it's better than the existing model of going to the store once a week and buying your, there's one thing I watched with Mr. Kennedy. Again, I just take my hat off to him, but he's saying, you know what? People are dying unprecedented, like just in my own neighborhood. And I'm not even going to talk about vaccinations. I'm not going to talk about COVID. You guys can all make your own assumptions or beliefs there. But people that I rubbed shoulders with just a year ago, like wonderful people, not crazy old, they're dead. Some was 7 days notice, some was 7 weeks notice, some was 5, but they're gone. Like these are real world, and I'm sure a lot of people on this call have that same experience. And what Kennedy was talking about was really all about, this is happening by design. This is happening on purpose. And when you dig into his family and his uncle and what they stood for, they died for it. And I really think that all of us have a fiduciary responsibility, not just to be ostriches, to stick our heads in the sand, but to actually do something about it. And I commend all of you for just kind of plugging in and keeping along for the ride. But I also, I have to take my hat off to Steph and to Mariano and Mr. Green and Phoenix and just folks that really want to say, hey, let's focus in on a jurisdiction, whether it's the Hopis, whether it's the Chickasaws, the Navajos, the Mexicans, the Hawaiians, the Texans, or maybe it's a combination of a lot of them within a union. And then that union can stand up in a way that none of them collectively, individually can. But with all of these systems that they're using behind it, that are using a standard. And that is the biggest key that is lost, is standards. And it's because these secret combinations, where they want mystery, they want margins. And where there is mystery, there is margins. Where people can't communicate and languages are broken down, or where they can't travel because barriers or borders, it's by design. And so if standards can actually be realized within jurisdictions, and what people don't understand is this is not just something that is hocus pocus or something in the future. You're going to see in October massive amount announcements of the same types of technologies that I'm showing you here that are actually coming from some of the most advanced and large ecosystems in the world, such as China, India, Russia, Brazil, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, and many others that are going to announce the same types of systems. And you know what? This system that I'm telling you about, I'm showing you these different systems. These systems, maybe not the health side of it, but the financial systems, the transaction systems, the asset management system, all of this system here, this wallet system, these currencies, equities, and commodities, eventually they will all literally transact within these same systems. So people are like, well, I don't believe it. I'll see it when I believe it. That's great. But for those that are not aware, it was way before COVID that we actually traveled to a lot of these countries that you're going to start seeing pop out with these systems and solutions. And the reason being is, I personally believe, some of the reasons why there is terrorism and some of the things that are negative is because of unfair trade, because of what's happening with these secret combinations. And if people are given the opportunity to have fair trade and to have unity, then those things don't have to happen. People don't have to go hungry. You talk about feeding the poor in San Francisco. It's ridiculous that that has to be a topic, but it's very real. I went over to meet with Twitter, which was the biggest pain in the rear end I've had. It was like literally a week of just wasting time. But as I was walking in and out of the Twitter offices every day, I saw zombies. I saw crazy stuff that I'd never seen before. And I grew up in LA. And the drugs and the addictions and the waste of life by design, by a system that by design, I'm convinced that they're actually giving these chemicals out to them. And I can only imagine how painful their bodies must, just the positions that they're in for so long. I mean, anyways, I'll stop blabbing. But Beck, I hope I've touched on the topics. And if there's anything else you want to bring up, please do. Or if not.
Yeah, no, you definitely touched on a lot of it, and I hope people see how amazing this is. And I think that, like when you said, China, Russia, like Brazil, like they're going to roll out systems, and I hope people can see the good in it and what we can do collectively the right way, open, transparent.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. I mean, I've seen the blockchain and supply chains. I've seen how incredible it can be for mass production. Yeah. And it needs to be in, like, communities need to understand how technology can help people help themselves, instead of thinking that it's a control measure, because it's not a control measure.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a control measure. I just think, like I said before, it's an education thing. And I guess, that is why we're here. But yeah, it's amazing. Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
Definitely answered my question.
Thank you. And thank you for your support over the years and for driving so much awareness down in Australia and the parts of the world that you could influence. Thank you. Margaret, you've had your hand up a couple times, if I'm not mistaken. You're welcome to, it looks like your bandwidth went red there now. But just know we'd love to hear from you if you'd like to say anything. Otherwise, the floor is open to anyone. Comments, thoughts, questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Michael. Just to piggyback kind of on what Becca was saying and what you were saying about your food supply. So we have a gentleman who came from Lebanon, and what he did, I think he started like 11, 12, 13 years ago. What he did is he rents rooftops in Montreal, and he grows food organically, because this is common practice in Lebanon. People grow food on the rooftops. He's turned it into something gigantic. So he's got 3 locations now with 400,000 square feet of growing space. So that's how he started. But now what he does is he does fruits and vegetables, but now he's gone out and partnered with other food suppliers for organic meats and dairy and bakeries, and it's a one-stop shop. And so you go online on Saturdays and you order whatever it is you want, and there's either drop-offs near where you live or you can have it delivered at home. So my question is, I mean, I would absolutely go and meet with him and talk to him about what you do. Could your technology, software platform be compatible with what he's doing? Could that work?
It could potentially work. It all comes down to really just data sets, and then scale is really what it comes down to. There's no reason why, the human body is actually pretty simple. What we put into it, how we move is kind of how, and the environment that we're in. There's a gentleman that's on this call, Carl. He's working on building, really, I believe, the future of housing. And it's similar to what this gentleman's doing within the food environment, where it's intelligently organizing different parts and pieces, whether it's supply chain or materials, and in quantifying a cost and putting it together and leveraging economies of scale to actually provide massive housing. I don't know about you, but there's in America, a lot of the homes are basically being, prices are going up, and there's certain types of buyers that are basically buying them, most of them based upon these secret combinations. And then you end up with a lot
Same
of the
here.
smaller homes
Same
that are
here.
just, the price of them, whether it's leasing or renting, the cost of housing is just going up exponentially, like 50% more than it was a couple of years ago. And if you don't have an existing deal, so to speak. And then not only that, but there's tens of millions of homes because of the population that is just, it's not there. And now I would argue that says, well, the American dream is everybody basically owns their own home. But when I went over to India and these other parts of the world, it was really interesting to see how parents and kids would just live together. Generations and families would
Yeah.
just live together. And I'm starting to see a lot more of that here. I don't know if you've seen it like on Facebook or other things, but just the ability to rent a room in someone else's house is becoming more and more popular. But I really believe that, the ability to finance and underwrite and transfer, whether it's through title process or insurance process, or even the ability to subscribe or own or lease or rent a home with an identity that is actually private and a reputation that actually means something. The goal is to try and put together parts and pieces of that. And, we even talked about elements of that within the last 24 hours, but grateful to have such brilliant minds. But the simple answer there, Danielle, is absolutely, if you think there's a fit there, maybe just send us over the website that he's focused on, and we'll see if we can't make heads or tails of it and put some time towards it. If anything, we could hook them in with the folks that built the software around this system, like all the Gold's Gyms, like a chunk of the Gold's Gyms in the United States of America. When people went in to say, hey, I want to start a New Year's resolution, or I want to be able to set this goal, or I want to lose 20 pounds, it was his software that they basically used. And he's taken this to a whole nother level. And he's a wonderful man with a wonderful heart. We actually, we had an asset purchase agreement probably 4 years ago to buy the business, but it was one of those that we didn't do. I wish we would have done that one and not the one with a terrible name that I won't even recommend, or even say, so I guess the net is collaboration and unity is what will actually enable this future to be realized. And it could be as small as a simple nucleus like what we have here. We've talked about collaboration within a country. We've talked about collaboration within different verticals or supply chain or vendors. These things will happen. We just got to stay consistent. And, there was a gentleman named Michael Simpson who taught me. He's kind of a professional coach since 2005. Every year we try and come up with one goal for the following year and blah, blah, blah. But he really turned on the lights around your habits are actually one thing that will either make you or break you. Like, think about that. If you have habits that actually enslave you or creates forms of addictions or things that can actually take away your time, your ability to be effective in life really diminishes. And I just commend all of you around the consistency around showing up, and hopefully you show up because you see an element of consistency around execution. You see the technology advancing, you see the problems in society. And this is one thing that's just been eye-opening for me. It's like people are still arguing if there's voter fraud or not. People are still arguing if pharmaceuticals are healthy or not. I mean, I don't want to say that, the lobbyists were wrong, but I think it's really important for us just to be honest and just look at the data and look at health and time and vitality, because that's a gift that we've been given. We're on this earth to actually have joy. And, when we're enslaved by others, that joy is taken. Like when I went over to China or Hong Kong or Taiwan, South Korea, and I watched how they live and how they work. And I saw what freedom does when it gives you peace and joy. And when freedom's not there, the opposite side of it. And some of them were like, they didn't even know. But in some ways, you could argue that they're happier. Because I can tell you there's a ton of Americans that got everything you can think of, and they're just not happy. Just not happy. And
I spent a month in Cuba, in Havana, in 2007, and those people have nothing. But let me tell you something. We had a driver who was at the time 68 years old, who lived through the Batista days and then Castro, and he had 5 degrees, a very, very intelligent man, and knew the history like the back of his hand. And he took my mom and I through Havana, time in and time out. He wasn't supposed to do that, but he did. And we looked at people, and I mean, the laundry was hanging across the streets and everything was dilapidated, but those people were smiling, singing, dancing, or playing an instrument, and would open their home and their hearts to anybody and everybody. I've never experienced anything like that. It was nothing like the propaganda coming out of the US and Canada and everywhere else.
Think
Nothing.
about some of these systems that we're talking about. Financial transactions, real time, no fees, no government, no banks, and the individual owns the asset. Identity, where you actually have like a Pacific Union that stands up for an individual that says, you can't profile them and force them to provide this type of identity this way. They need to have their privacy or the ability to travel. You know, think about how people in Havana, did they have the financial wherewithal to travel? And I think what technology does, it's the great equalizer. And many people said, well, the internet's going to do that. And I'm sorry. But just like what happened with Facebook yesterday, where the Facebook came out and said, oh, we filtered this with COVID. We filtered this with the elections. We filtered this with the Biden, blah, blah, blah. Where they're just, and that's one of the reasons why I would just pat Elon on the back and all those that are trying to focus on freedom of speech and the rights to be able to be transparent and honest, and why we would even take a lot of the things that are here and just link it to those types of efforts and endeavors. But the point that I'm driving at is think about Havana, think about Cuba, and if the ability for someone to work within Florida and to send the money back to Havana, because right now most people in Havana, I would say 80% of the people aren't they don't even have a bank account, let alone can get money, so they're tied to Western Union. And so someone that actually, maybe it's an uncle or a brother or a son that's working hard in a different part of the world. Maybe it's in Denver, Colorado, or Chicago, or Miami, and they're sending the money back instead of having 8 to 10% of it just sucked out by Western Union. And then the other sides of it around taxation, where they're talking about sales tax, FICA, SUTA, HUDA, PUDA, income, property, you name the taxes. I believe that these systems that we're showing you here can absolutely revolutionize how governments are run and accountable to their people. You can see if a sales tax actually paid for a road. You can see if a property tax paid for a school. It's transparent.
Oh my God.
This is like real world problems that are totally solved. In my opinion, you don't even need to file taxes because everything is transparent and auditable. Like literally, if it's set up correctly, if there is a tax, and that's a whole nother conversation. If there's a tax that needs to be paid, let's say it's a sales tax. If you just report the transactions here, I'll show you. Let's jump into the Mexican ecosystem. Let's go back over to their main page. Let's go down to the finance section. I think they have this. Maybe they
Michael,
don't.
I can't even imagine a government anywhere that would allow this system to exist or to penetrate their citizens. I can't imagine that they would allow this.
Well, that's why a lot of the ecosystems are ecosystems that were stolen. Like the Hawaiian Kingdom was illegally annexed in the 1830s. Many people know that. Many presidents of the United States actually go and say, hey, we know that it was illegally annexed, and here's an apology letter, hundreds of pages. But imagine a system where an individual, a consumer, can actually purchase something from a merchant. And if there is a tax, heavens to bird, if there is, the tax is actually paid real time. The reporting for it is totally transparent. If you have the cost of a shelf or the cost of the product or even retirement, all of these different things can actually be paid and audited and reported in real time. And let's say that the customer wants their lollipop a credit for their lollipop. And so they turn their lollipop back in and they actually get all their money back and it's clawed back. All of the reporting within these systems, we're talking about changing the financial systems, changing the reporting systems, changing the auditing system. And you're right, there's probably going to be a lot of people that don't want that. But there's also going to be a lot of people that are like, you know what? We'll roll it out because we care about the citizens. And I believe that countries like the ones, and there's some that I won't mention, but like the Mexican country, they do want transparency for their individuals. And they fought wars over this stuff. And many of them are absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, so let's go. Let's get this done. What do we do? Where do we go? Who do we speak to? Let's do this, because there's so much value in it. And I think, I think the number one block is that most people don't understand this at all. And then you've got the governments over here telling them they're coming out with these systems that are going to be so convenient and easy to use. And you just have a chip and you go like this and you pay your bills. And so, they're romanticizing and making it seem so phenomenal, and people are buying it because they don't understand. So where do we go from here? How do we educate people? For me, it always comes back to the same thing. And Becca's mentioned this several times also. For me, it comes down to awareness, consciousness, education, knowledge. So how do we get there? What do we do to get there? Because what you're offering the world, Michael, is beyond anything that I think any of us could ever imagine or hope for. So what do we do to get there?
I think that the simple answer is time. If we take time out of the equation, everything makes sense and works. And, this may not even happen in my personal lifetime, which, by the way, there are hundreds of people that are behind this and building it. It's not, I'm the blabber in the front, the cheerleader, the rah-rah, but there are a lot of other people that are behind it. But there's also a lot of people that have been quietly watching it. Like I can tell you, the meeting that we had with the Glenn Beck folks on Friday, that meeting started 2.5 years prior. And it takes time. On one hand, it takes time, it takes trust, it takes awareness, it takes adoption. On the other hand, this is absolutely a simple system to use. Like we could have someone that's brand new to this, hasn't ever used it. They go download Hawaiian Life. They literally could be set up and receive a transaction all within the matter of 2 minutes, like full on. Like we're talking about a new identity system, no username, passwords, a new financial system with real-time transactions, and all of it set up and they own the data all within 2 minutes. That is just unheard of. And the setup process and download process is actually 30 seconds. But I think that when things get confusing and noisy enough, when people start understanding that the media and the social systems are not being honest, when people understand the financial system is, and I don't want to use the word a house of cards because I really believe that the founding fathers set it up with the best intents. But over the years, you have pride and ego and greed and corruption that it gets into systems. And somebody told to me this like 2 weeks ago. They're like, Mike, any kind of voting system is broken. Why? Because they're always going to vote for the people that will give them something for nothing.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, that's real. But what happens if councils could actually come together and ask deeper questions around, and I think that's half the calculation in life is, what is the right question? And then listening to the actual audience and letting people have a voice and be heard, and then having, whether it's a king or whether it's a president or whether it's a prime minister, they actually do the work for the people. Where you have so many corruptions in all these different parts of the world, whether you're talking Argentina or there's elements of issues in Brazil, all over the place, it's because there's a disconnect between the voice of the people and what is actually happening. And so these systems can literally solve this. Will this happen in our lifetime? I hope so. I really, 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 really hope so. Because could it be in 2 weeks? Massive start. I can tell you some of these people have reach and depth. The question is, will they slow down to actually pay attention like each one of you are doing? And you're right, Al. It's we have to take our own individual accountability of our own futures. So, other thoughts or questions or anybody? Margaret, I don't know if you wanted to talk, or I think Phoenix, you wanted to say something. You're welcome to it. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and convene. And
Hey, Michael, Phoenix here. Hi, all. I think part of this conversation might be best picked up on private communications to follow up on certain matters.
okay.
If that's okay with you. Other than that, I think that everything being spoke here is amazing, and I appreciate everybody's collaboration. And yes, I do believe in, as Michael knows, the company I started, which is Alliance for Resourceful Collaboration, which is really Unity 1, which is, break us down to kind of like a Neo event, where it's say you're in the Matrix. It's a Neo, it's a 1, and it's also Eon. So when you break all that down on elementary level, and then you add physics and so forth, my brain runs at a different type of speed than most others, but keys are very important to systems. And therefore, I think that needs to be addressed in order to have a system in place, monetary-wise, as well as identity-wise, as well as freedom within sovereignty and so forth within each and every individual moving forward. That's kind of what I'd like to just put out to the group.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and follow your lead on that. Margaret, did you have something you wanted to say? I know I've seen a couple times. Looks like there might be a bandwidth issue. We'll go ahead and play a video from Jimmy Levy, which I believe he's one that stood up for right long ago and walked away from Hollywood, walked away from $10 million contract with Columbia. And he talked about a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with right now. I want you just to think about the Facebook letter that came out yesterday as you listen to this. So see you next week.
This is a war on religion. This is a war on the children. They give you the cure with the sickness. This is a war on tradition. This is a war on religion. This is a war on the children. They give you the cure with the sickness. This is a war. This is a war. This is a war that we living through. Never reveal to you that they also leaving killing you. They don't tell you what the hell you agreeing to. Shaping and hurting you. Don't know who leading you. Keep on proceeding to follow. Your mind is so hollow. Are you being coddled by government swallowing up everything that the media tell you without a question or a problem? All of the sheep being slaughtered. They poison the water, removing the father and trusting these daughters. Ignoring blue collar, keep printing the dollar and washing your sons and your daughters. Ain't got any honor if I'm being honest. I just ain't picking the side, but I'm never right for my freedom and die for my freedom and question the government lies. A lot on my mind and so little time. Gotta think all of us needing a sign. The devil he hides and ego and pride. They sell and they paying the price. God won't give you more than you can handle. Government should be dismantled. Every politician got a scandal. Prepare for the war. We going to battle. This is a war on religion. This is a war on the children. They give you the cure with the sickness. This is a war on tradition. This is a war on religion. This is a war on the children. They give you the cure with the sickness. This is a war. This is a war. I'd rather be red pill, get killed. The ignorant living and meet that skill. Don't stand up for something, you falling for nothing. Don't wait till the world that we know fall ill. This is the revelation of our generation, losing civilization. I'm determined just to liberate us with our dedication. From the Terminator, fuck your medication. The administration can alienate us or exterminate us. I'll just keep on praying for your salvation. You are outdated. Society becoming outrageous. Keep your house painted for the firstborn. The angel of death in its worst form. We being scorned, look out for their horns. Remember, this isn't their first war. They coming prepared, so just be aware. They do not want to hear none of your prayers. This is a war that ain't playing fair. They feed off your fear. They wanting you scared. Death and despair, but it's all in the air. Just be aware. You think I care? The more that you know, the more that it's clear. This is a war. It's already here. This is a war on religion. This is a war on the children. They give you the cure with the sickness. This is a war on tradition. This is a war on religion. This is a war on the children. They give you the cure with the sickness. This is a war. This is a war. Home of the slave. Till the crickets make a sound. Where's the bold and the brave? We all have to stand our ground. Home of the slave. Till the crickets make a sound. Where's the bold and the brave? We all have to stand our ground. This is a war on religion. This is a war on the children. They give you the cure with the sickness. This is a war on tradition. This is a war on religion. This is a war on the children. They give you the cure with the sickness.